So hey guys, it's Zion again, and we're back on the battlefield with some Conquest Domination. And this video would have been out much sooner than it currently is, but Adobe Premiere Pro decided to crash, or break, or something. It's not working, is what I'm trying to say, and I can't for the life of me get it to work, and so I have acquired a copy of Sony Vegas Pro. And that's what I'm currently editing this on, and it's a very different workflow, and I've had a whole bunch of time trying to get it right, and it probably still isn't right all the way through. But for now, I hope that this isn't a terrible setup for you guys. I'm going to try and get as comfortable with this new setup as I can and bring you guys the same content I always have. That little housekeeping out of the way, let's get into the topic, which today is challenge. Now, I keep saying that I've been watching a lot of streams, and I have been. The main reason being, I don't watch much TV anymore, to be honest with you, and the internet suffices for that. So I was watching some Mega Man streams, and I'm old enough to remember the old Mega Man X games, Mega Man X4 being my first foray into the series, and I remember how utterly challenging that game was for me, and probably would be for me to this day. And it got me thinking about modern gaming, especially modern multiplayer gaming, and even multiplayer single-player gaming to a certain extent. And how challenge is not so much the point as it is the enjoyment. And I don't think this is a bad thing, by any stretch. But if you remember, if you're an older gamer, older than me even, you remember back in the old Nintendo days, there was a concept called Nintendo Hard. And Nintendo prided themselves on this. Their games were so hard that it became synonymous with their brand, the difficulty. Mega Man is another thing that was a lot harder back in the day, and I wonder why games today are focused so much more on the entertainment and not so much on how can we challenge our players as opposed to just making our games fun. Now, before I go on, let me simply say that yes, I do know about games like Demon's Souls and Dark Souls, and all the games that are by their very nature hard without needing a difficulty setting. But I think that the vast majority of games released today are made easy at the start to make games accessible. Because if you're playing a game and it's not accessible to you, if you're instantly destroyed by it, then what incentive do you have to play it? And of course, if you go back to the old days, a game was difficult because it was in an arcade. Because you wanted people to keep putting in their quarters, or their dimes, or their pennies, or whatever it is they were putting in to play your game. But then there were the home consoles like the SNES and the NES and all these consoles that didn't have that need but were still incredibly difficult. And I think the main reason for that was that there wasn't a lot of background. People didn't know how to properly difficulty scale their games. But at the same time, there was a level of reward that came from even succeeding a little bit in these difficult games. And gamers, I think, today are worse overall than they were years ago. Because if you look at a shooter and you go back in time, I think shooters like Quake and even early Counter-Strike, they took more skill, more twitch, more reaction time, and just generally were more difficult to master than the games are today. And that really bugs me. Primarily because I feel like, as a gamer who was around before the internet, before multiplayer online was huge, and if you wanted to play with your friends, you went over to their house and you played with them, these are the games that really took you and challenged you and said to you, all right, here's the mechanics, they're very bare bones, we're not going to tell you anything, but go and succeed. And when you did succeed, it was so rewarding. There was such this influx of positive emotion, achievement, happiness, joy, whatever emotion you want to put to it, that was there. But I think that now that games have become a huge business, that's the problem. Challenge is bad business. If something is hard, fewer people will buy it. That's why instructions for most toys have become really simple. That's why there's a lot of dumbing down of music, of movies, of all that. If it's easy, people will buy it. And I want there to be a place in the gaming industry for difficult games like Mega Man, like Dark Souls, like Contra, where you have to really get involved in the game to not worry so much about, am I going to actually beat this level on this first try, as much as it is, am I going to beat this level at all? Because I want games to not be these dumb, sort of turn your brain off experiences. I think that there's a place for those, and that's a really good niche that Call of Duty satisfies. But games like Dark Souls should sell more, they should be more successful, more popular, and they are popular enough. But I think there needs to be a larger section of the gaming audience that cares and wants games like the old Mega Mans, games like Ghosts and Goblins, games that older gamers, older than me, like I say, know and enjoyed and absolutely loved, not because they were easy, not because they were rewarding in and of themselves, but because the player's achievement itself was rewarding. And while I know that gaming is a business, and I know that there's a lot of money being thrown around, and risk is a dirty word in the industry right now, but I think that there's really a place. There is a demand for games with an intrinsic challenge to them. The success of games like Counter-Strike, and the continued livelihood of games like Quake, and the success of the recent old-type Mega Man's titles, tell me and should tell publishers and developers that people want a hard game, that people want a game that punishes you for failure. I love BioShock Infinite, don't get me wrong, but it does not punish you for failure. And I think games need to more often these days, because it needs to go back to that old style that made gaming what it is today.